people were unaware that actually the Scottish service was separate, nor how far things had gone down south. But I mean, there'll be the same mix as everybody else. You know, some people who are clearly yes, some people who were kind of sitting on the, oh no, don't want to think about it, and now they've seen that, the people have Facebooked it to them, they've started talking, they've started doing their homework, and they're moving to yes. So the more people dig, but the problem is people have to dig to get information to base their own decision on. And in the end of the day, everyone has to make their own decision. I mean, people who are, you know, heart and soul unionists, I wouldn't expect them to vote yes. I'm not trying to convince them. The people I think will be really upset are the people who say, oh, I'd love Scotland to be independent. It'd be marvellous if we could be independent, but we couldn't manage it. We couldn't afford it. We can't do it. Because when they discover that actually the media have just been feeding them this line, they're the ones who are actually going to be quite bitter. We'll feel that we've done everything we can. I mean, my hubby and I have done 1,400 miles in the last 8 weeks, and we've got another nearly 2,000 to do in the next 6 weeks. You know, so when I wake up on the 19th, I will be heartbroken if it's a no, but at least I'll know there isn't one more thing I could have tried. But people who feel that they were misled and that they would have liked a yes vote but didn't dare because they've been told not to dare, I think they're the ones that are actually going to feel really, really bitter with the media, with the politicians, etc.
And to answer your question as well, I would say that discussion of it within NHS organisations has been to a great extent inhibited. I don't know if you recall, at some point last year, the NHS Grampian actually put out a very specific referendum policy, which was one of absolute scrupulous neutrality, no information being slayed from either side, and essentially very little discussion being had. And that's how I see my colleagues. I know from quite a few of my colleagues, having had discussions on either nights out or in a coffee room or whatever, that there is a good proportion that are yes supporters. I would say that there's a couple that are very vociferous no supporters, and a couple who, from what they say, I suspect that that's the way they're leaning. But there's very little discussion about it, so I couldn't say what the majority of my colleagues think.
I mean, the only NHS debates have been those organised by unions. Royal College of Nursing did one in our hospital, Unison did one. So they're the only people who are able to, and it has to be a yes-no debate. And the problem I've had, just as a yes activist in the Troon area, Better Together will not debate. So it's really, we managed to debate. We got 570 people turned up to listen to it, but it took us 4 months to track down 2 no speakers. And Better Together rang one of them, who was a local Tory MSP, the day before and said, pull out, don't do it. And that's happened to people all over the place, that they've paid the money for a venue, they've set it all up, and literally at 24 hours notice they've pulled out. So getting yes-no debates, which is what it would have to be in a public institutional building, is really important.
Okay, gentleman at the white shirt in the back.
Hi. If we persuade enough people to vote yes, and if the newly appointed Scottish Government decides it's going to retain the NHS in Scotland as a structure, and a deputation was to come to you from the Government to say, well, we'd like to do something better with this organisation, we've got a little bit more money, not a lot, what sort of serious reforms would you consider making to the organisation to deliver a more effective service?
Be unlikely that they're going to write to me. I mean, I would have to say, you know, talking about that the NHS struggles to deliver health, I think there are lots of things they have to do outside us, but I think one of the things that they have to do within us is to tackle primary care, and particularly primary care within areas of deprivation. There's a group called the Deep End, who are GPs within deprived areas, who write about the inverse care law, which is that in the really poorest areas, you often have the least resource going in to try and deal with what's happening. Because the hospitals are getting overwhelmed. Obviously we have increasing demand which we struggle to meet, and part of that is because the GPs are unable to meet the demand that's going to them, and therefore more and more patients just bypass and come to hospital. So I think one of the first things we'd have to look at is actually how you resource primary care, what you put in. You know, certainly GPs, I don't know what the area you're in, but kind of some of the people on NHS for Yes who work in parts of government and so on, you know, they're not just dealing with someone who's got tummy pain or a cold or whatever. It's the housing issue, and their benefits have been stopped, and you know, how can they deal with this? And to do that in 10 minutes, you know, or even have how you send people, you know, joining that up with the more social side of things, because a lot of GP time is actually spent on social work rather than on health. So I think that would be one of the first things you would look at trying to do. And then getting us all out of our cars and off our backsides. Psychopath.
Yeah, I would also like to sort of say that as a GP in the local area, I get sort of regular emails from NHS practitioner services. They're constantly sending emails about all manner of things. But one of the things they send very regularly is actually recruitment adverts, locum adverts for different areas. And what you see consistently is they're failing to recruit to those areas that are poor. And the reason being that they are already understaffed. So a GP taking on that job, when they could go somewhere that's perhaps more prosperous, but perhaps a bit of an easier ride, you know, is actually they're going somewhere where they're going to be expected to work harder for not any more money, not any more, for very little support, you know, instability of the staff around them, you know. Structurally, the general practice in the poorest areas is suffering because of that, and very remote areas, the same principle. Like my in-laws live on Isla, and they've got 3 main GP practices. They've got nominally 7 or 8 GPs, and they have got a partnership in the part where they are, which has been advertised over the last year unfilled because it's a difficult part. So what we have to do is, yes, we have to say our NHS structure is not perfect. There are areas that are not adequately resourced and funded. We have to work out how to divert resources better to areas of need. We have to work out how to incentivise staff to actually work in those areas of need. And that's easier said than done, I'll grant you, and I'm not quite sure I have the solution to it on the top of my head.
Gentleman in the green jacket.
My question, purely by coincidence, is something to do with what you were just saying there. In the Western Isles, there is talk of a devolved council, and if that takes off, I'm not quite sure if it's already started or if it's in the process, it's going through Parliament, I'm not quite sure, but if that takes off, then you may find places like Glasgow and Edinburgh might want devolved council powers as well. Now, how, if that worked, would that work within the civil, so the NHS? Would that mean that the NHS, that the islands, etc., would have the money to look after their own hospitals, etc., to fund them, or would that be kept with the Scottish Government? I mean, how devolved is devolved?
NHS isn't under local government. NHS is under Health Board, so it's not a council service in that sense. So it wouldn't necessarily change. Obviously, one of the things that we've been trying to work towards in Scotland is more closer working for exactly the reasons that I was talking about. You know, so some of the issues in general practice are social work issues. Some of the elderly patients who get trapped in hospital, it's because there isn't a nursing home to send them to. So you get all this where people are falling against that interface. So obviously that's something that would have to be worked out. But it's not like schools that local health is a council-controlled budget. It isn't at the moment.
I mean, there was a discussion about this on Radio Scotland 3-4 weeks ago when we were talking from the islands, and there was a concern of some people that they wanted more money spent on the NHS on the islands, and my feeling that I got from that conversation is that the people in the islands wanted more say on how the money was spent in their NHS within the islands. Now, I wasn't quite sure if the Scottish Government at any point were considering devolving some of the NHS power or money to the Western Isles, and in fact to
Well, it would be Western Isles Health Board. So obviously the Western Isles Health Board could look at what their issues are and say, well, okay, we don't have a govern, but we have this issue. You know, people are not stabbing each other, but they're, you know, falling off tractors or whatever. So, I mean, a health board can do that. We already have the structure to do that. And, I mean, I totally agree that I think that actually, if we get power to Edinburgh, we then have to get power out of Edinburgh. Now, I don't think it can go to the local government structures we have at the moment, because I think a lot of them are not remotely fit for purpose. But, you know, all of us... I mean, I have been, as I said, whizzing around the country, and I wouldn't even have attended a meeting like this before an election, let alone got up and spoken at a meeting like this. And this is what I see. I mean, I see people out on wet Monday nights, sunny Saturday afternoons, Friday nights, because people are engaged and are out. And one of the things, if we get a yes, is we cannot go back in our boxes on the 19th. So a big challenge that will exist for that 18 months or a couple of years afterwards is not just the islands get more say, and not just Glasgow and Edinburgh and Aberdeen get more say, but local areas need to have more say, because we do all have different problems. So we will have to look at how we change the structures right down to sort of community council level, that we could all say, I want to go and join that, I want to discuss how do we set up a better cycle path, how do we get an allotment area, whatever. And how does that then happen? How do we get funding? How do we change our village, our area that we live in? And so that's what I see, is that power has to move out, but I don't see that it would just be the Western Isles. And I don't see them setting up a separate health service. I mean, exactly what came back at the back. They couldn't exactly train their people. We provide their doctors, we train them in university, we then train them in hospital. And we require that. It's that unified thing within Scotland that has got rid of competition. I am not, if you come in and I know my pal down the road can do a better job on you than me, which as I'm a breast surgeon I would jolly well hope so, I'm not hanging on to you because the profit will come to my hospital. And that's what's happening down south. I see comments coming back to my video of people who say, I'm a surgeon sitting here, I used to go out and do plastic surgery cases in local hospitals, I'm not being allowed to do that, I'm not being allowed to teach them simple techniques because they're the competition. That's what we don't want. But we do still want to be able to work together, but yet have enough flexibility to look at what are the issues in your area.
Gentleman in the white shirt at the back, and then I'll take you afterwards.
Hi, I'm working here, and we have the integration between health and social care happening up here next year. I'm wondering about the effect of a no vote to social care services in Scotland. For elderly people, sorry.
Sorry, for elderly people.
For elderly people, yes.
Elderly.
Well, I would say at the moment that a no vote would not directly change anything, in the sense that we already have control over such things as free care for the elderly, and like the same principle that we're talking about in terms of NHS budgets being cut in England, meaning a proportional cut in services and cut in block grants, will mean that services that we're providing just now, which are paid for from Scottish monies, be it through the devolved head, be it through the local authorities, will be cut because we don't have control over that budget. So the reason we can provide the services is because of the spending priorities that we choose to make at the moment. So if our budget is tightened sufficiently, then we may be forced to, for example, abandon free care for the elderly. Equally, if we did vote yes, then we don't just control e-block grant, which is about £34 billion at the moment, of which 11.7 billion is in the NHS. I can honestly say I don't know exactly how much is spent on free personal care for the elderly. I can only apologise for not having that figure on top of my head. But the point is that if we had control over all budgets in all areas, then we could actually reduce spending in areas we don't deem to be sort of important. We wouldn't be sort of spending money on infrastructure. London's infrastructure projects down in London or whatever, and we can divert money that's been spent on things into different things. So I guess it doesn't guarantee that service will be better, it doesn't guarantee that in the future someone will decide actually we don't think the service is worthwhile anymore, but it will give us more control over the ability to keep things at if we so chose.
And that's exactly back to your point.
Yeah.
That in the end of the day, what is important, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 40 years, is it would be the electorate of Scotland responding to a manifesto that would say, yeah, we think that's what we should be doing. And if, like what's happening down south, it actually happens without being in a manifesto, then you have the option to chip them out in the rear in the following election. And that's what we don't have at the moment.
Gentleman there.
I suffer a lot of health problems, being mental health as well as I've had 2 operations on my back, and basically the doctors have bugged me. In theory. Now, I can't even get the proper medication to take my pain away. Some mornings I could be on the floor and I can't get up because I'm that sore. And I go to my doctor telling him I'm there, and he says I can't give you any more. Can't give you anything more than what you've already got. He wouldn't even consider giving me different medication to maybe relieve the pain. At the end, it was their fault that I'm in the condition I'm in. So is that good? Is the GPs going to get more money?
I mean, I have no idea of your case, and I have no idea what it is your GP is making that decision on. But the one thing is, your GP is not getting money for giving you that tablet or not giving you that tablet. So the one thing that you can be sure is they are trying to look at what tablets are an option, what are the side effects of them, what are the addictiveness of them, what is likely to work. What's already happening down south, because some GPs are commissioning GPs, some GPs have shares in some of these health companies because of the previous iteration, the independent treatment centres, is that they are under pressure to not send you anywhere, not give you things, and therefore the patient already is looking at the GP and thinking, why are you not referring me? Is your budget spent? Why are you referring me there? Are you going to make money out of it? That's what you don't have. Obviously, I can't really get into the detail of the issue of your back pain. I have no idea why your GP is making that decision. But it is not because of them being given money. They're not getting money because they don't prescribe something for you.
My doctor is prepared to give me anything for my mental health. Any tablets I want, I'll get. But when it comes to my back, they're not prepared to give me anything that's going to take that pain away. The tablets I'm on 5 different painkillers just to try and relieve the pain.
So he is giving you tablets, it's just they're not
They don't
working.
work.
Yeah.
But he won't even consider giving me anything that might work. Because he's already said to you, we're looking at morphine based or something over in that type of areas. He's not prepared to give me that.
I don't think that I can give you a consultation.
When it comes to when the consultation.
No, but it isn't. It's not
Is
that
that
he's.
the change?
But because he's not giving it to you for any financial or political or other reason. Obviously, you are a young man. He doesn't want to be putting you on morphine. If as he has clearly explained to you. I mean, because you would be lying at home on the sofa, zonked out of your head on morphine. So, and it is totally addictive. So that may be a reason why he doesn't want to give you that. But you need to speak to him openly. But what it isn't is anything to do with funding or anything to do with this debate at all. So that will not change.
You just get the feeling that it's because of money that he's
No,
doing.
no, it's not.
I
No, it
think we have to move
isn't.
on. One final question, because it's almost time to wrap it up. If there is one.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, last question.
It's more of the audience than the respected speakers. I'd just like to know how many people in this room are undecided. How they're going to vote.
You honestly expect them to stand up and admit that?
Well,
That's why you have a secret vote when people come in.
I suspect the problem with that is that the people that come to these very good debates are people who have already made up their minds. And the people we've really got to get to are the people that are still trying to decide. And some of them just aren't motivated enough. And the danger is that in the 90s we discovered there was too many of them and it didn't turn out, or we haven't managed to persuade them.
I mean, I think that absolutely that's a danger. Normally when I run a meeting, I do a secret vote at the beginning and end, because then I can see who I've been speaking to and I can see whether it made any whit of difference. And most of the meetings, I'm not running so many meetings because I'm obviously whizzing around to other people's meetings, but we were, you know, when I started we would have about 40% yes and 60% no and don't know. And usually at the end of the meeting it would have moved to about 60% yes. More recent meetings it was about 60% yes that were coming. But it was still 40% no and don't know that turned up. The big yes-no debate that we did was about that, was about 40% yes who came. And there was about 99 don't knows and 61 of them moved to yes at the end of the debate. So I mean that's why I always do a vote on the way in and out. It's quite hard to put people on the spot, but it absolutely is a danger, and it's far too early for yes rallies of us all turning up for pleasure. But equally, hopefully, if you were already a yes voter, maybe we've answered a question that someone has put to you, or maybe you've heard a fact that you can hang on to and use in conversation with someone else. Because, you know, all of you, if you are yes, you need to go and be ambassadors. It's not always to convince everyone else, it's to get people thinking about it and talking about it and doing their homework so that whatever decision they make, it's the decision they actually believe in and not a decision they're going to regret the following year when they say, oh, I was duped by, you know, the Daily Mail or whatever.
I think in the last part of Phillipa's answer, she did kind of make the point that I was just about.
Sorry.
It's all right. But yes, I think the key thing is playing devil's advocate. Even if every single person in this room is already a dedicated yes voter, and if all we have done is actually then sort of laid out a whole series of arguments with the NHS and actually given you more facts, more information, and ability to then take that argument out to people out and about, then that will have been a small benefit, but I actually truly hope that wasn't the case.
I mean, I do a lot of what are called Women for Independence cafes, and they trump these because everyone's at tables with coffee and cake, and that's definitely my kind of political meeting. And what I've had a lot of women come to me afterwards, many of whom who were don't know or soft no and have moved, but also people who were yes, but say, you've answered a question that someone at work always throws at me, or I think now I would feel confident to talk to people at work about it. And that's what it is. It's the people you know, it's conversations, it's spreading it out like ripples on a pond, and we've only got 7 weeks left. So, you know, it's gone from being the longest campaign in history to there is no time left. So everybody has to get active. Try and follow
All right then, that's us for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Can I first of all thank you all for coming. Can we please have your appreciation for Douglas, who's come all the way from you'll all agree there is nothing more important than your health, and in the NHS we have a fantastic system in Scotland and something that we really do not want to lose. So I'm sure you'll all take on board the information that you've been presented with tonight. I've certainly had my eyes open with some of the facts that our speakers have presented to us. It's been an eye-opener to me, some of it. So finally, to wrap up, our next meeting is, Moray meeting is tomorrow night in Forest, Business for Scotland meeting at the Moss at 6 o'clock, and probably of no interest to you, the next meeting after that is especially for Polish people in Polish. So if you want to come along to that, it's on the 6th of August. Thank you again for coming. Good night.
There's some little NHS for Yes leaflets at the back if you want to take them away. If you are a member of the health service, as I say, in any capacity, please log in, sign up, sign the declaration and show your certificate.